Hello and welcome to another video. Today's video I'm going to be showing you how I made my remix for Post Malone's track Fall Apart. This might actually be the first video I post, so if you haven't seen me before, hello, welcome. So I'm just going to be breaking down some of the main parts here. I won't go into so much detail about how I mixed it because I could probably talk for hours and that's going to bore all of you to death. So I'll just go through some of the ideas and inspirations that I had and why I did certain things. Now I'm going to play you the final mastered track on SoundCloud, and I will be posting this after I edit and post this video, so feel free to have a listen. Just so you know what it sounds like, here we go. Come back in 4 minutes if you want to see the breakdown, how I made everything. So that is the full track that you've just heard, and that is what I will be posting after this video. Right, so I'm ready to dive into this track. Got my coffee. Let's go. So this track all started with the piano basically, and I liked the original piano for the actual song, for Post Malone's version of the song, so I decided to kind of take that and expand on it and just write my own little melody. It was quite simple, quite sweet, just sounded like that. And I've got some stuff in the background there. There's just some synths that I've layered under the piano. So I've taken the same MIDI and I've put it in like an alchemy synth for a pad or something. I can't remember what it was, but you get this like kind of dreamy, sparkly effect that happens there. And you've also got some recordings of my voice going, listen, 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 listen. And that's so that hopefully subliminally it will make you want to listen to it more. I don't know. And basically as well, you see this section here is kind of like this sweep comes in and it goes. That was actually a recording I took of the cars going past my house. So back in uni, I had this room where you could open the window, and you weren't really meant to, but you could like go and climb on a roof, and you could sit out there on a roof and just look at the traffic and listen to like the birds. So I went out there one day with my microphone and I just recorded about 10 minutes of background noise, all the cars going past, all the birds, and I put some reverb on it, and it ended up sounded and that's the sweeping sound that you hear in the background. That's the it added a little bit to the feel of the track, so that's why I did that. This track was always kind of special to me because I spent so long doing it. I originally started this in like the first or second year of uni. I'm graduated now, and I came back to it shortly after I graduated to improve it a little bit more with some of the techniques that I've learned. Something I like to do a lot actually, I'll come back to a track and then listen to it again with a fresh pair of ears, and it gets you all of these melodies and fresh ideas, they come bursting into your brain. And so this here that I've highlighted is actually the original section of the track that I produced a few years ago. And it just starts off with the vocals and the piano, and then it builds up into quite an electronic kind of feel. Lots of synths, lots of textures going on. So I did all of that a year ago, and I've taken the stems basically and I've recorded this piano only quite recently actually, and added the drums. The build up I did a few years ago, and the verse and the drop I did only very recently. So it's kind of like a mishmash of all of my styles and experience. It's like a all in one track, I guess. So this section you're looking at here, this is the drums. This is the drum pattern for the verse, and it comes in, and if I solo this, now something I really wanted to exaggerate were the hi-hats. I wanted to have like a kind of flittering pattern going on there. I've got this kind of complicated thing which I just played on my piano, and then I converted it into an actual drum kit on the MIDI. And I've sent this all to the same bus so I can process it as a group. On their own, that doesn't really make much sense, but what I've done there is I've played the pattern, and then I've removed the hi-hats when the kick comes in and when the snare comes in. Apart from the snare, actually, some snare hits, I've still got the hi-hat there, just to give it a little bit of extra brightness, because I've cut off some of the high end here on my kick. Sorry, not the kick, the snare. When I put the hi-hat playing underneath that snare, it just brings back a little bit more of that brightness. But with the kick, I've removed the hi-hats, basically, because I wanted it to sound way more punchy. I wanted the kick to be the focal point, really, in the verse. So coming into the build-up from about bar 26 here, you can see there's not a lot of stuff that's going on. There's not a lot of green bits or bars that I've added here. If I zoom out, you can see a little bit better. It looks quite empty. And the reason for that is because I have bounced this old stem that I made about 2 years ago, and I've kind of just used that. And I've added some drums for the build. I've sidechained it a little bit so they come through more and more as it builds up. And some of the other things I've added here are these vocals. And so another thing I like to do is I take like a one note, like a long hit. In this case, it turned out to be the ooh. So I took Post and I took him going ooh, and I reversed it. gives a really nice build, and it leaves a lot of room for like the vocals to come in. They just seem so much more powerful, I think. This remix for me, it revolved quite heavily around the piano. I mean, it started with the piano at the start of the build-up, everything cuts out, but the piano's still there, it still plays that sweet melody. So I wanted to kind of keep it like that, which is why in the second half of the build-up you can hear the piano melody for the drop coming through. And that builds and builds and builds in volume, like over time. I mean, with all the electronic stuff going on in the background, it seemed a little bit overwhelming for me to have the lead melody as anything else apart from a piano, you know? Too much electronic. I wanted to keep that acoustic piano vibe, but also during the drop give like an explosion of like, whoa, synth, whoa, electronic, you know? But still keep that piano that cuts through, that drives the melody forwards. And I've done that in the build-up, and it really comes out more in the drop. Now, some of the interesting bits I've done in the drop here, you can see there's like, bass isn't that interesting, it's just a preset and I've EQ'd and compressed a little bit. We've got the chord stacks up here that just go and they play for a long time. And we've got the melody here, which actually sidechains the chords a little bit. If we open up this bar, do you hear it? It's kind of like, it's going down a tiny bit. It sounds a little bit like bumpy, you know? And that is because the signal from the melody is being sent to a sidechain compressor on here. And let's see if I can find it actually. Well, I can't find it, but it's actually being sent to a sidechain compressor. When these notes from the melody hit, these frequencies around the midsection, they're actually being removed from these chords just to give the piano melody a little bit more room to come through without having to turn it up too much. Because I turned it up and it was playing with the chords and it just sounded a bit overwhelming. You know, there was a lot of textures there that kind of mashed up and sounded bad together. So I removed some of them from the chords. So one interesting thing I did actually, like just before the drop, this green bar here, I've kind of layered it a few times around the drop. So I've taken a bar of this. So I've actually soloed the reverb bus. Wow. I actually learned this technique from a very good dubstep producer called AU5. He did like a 10-minute long video on how to use this technique to create like a different hypersaw weird detunes. Like, I don't know what he called it. He called it like a hyper growl, but it just involved like taking a sample and importing it into Serum, and you resample it a bunch of times to oscillator A, and it gives you like a waveform that you can modulate throughout. The idea was that you could do this with any sound. So what I actually did was I soloed my reverb bus for like a bar, just all the reverb, like all that lovely thick texture, and I bounced it into here, and I did that little technique and kind of modified it into something that sounded like. And so that plays before the drop, just to kind of like ease you into that electronic explosion. Transition's got to be smooth. I mean, you got to have some like foreplay, you know? And I think that does quite well at bridging the acoustic elements of the track to the electronic elements during the drop. And then it ends where that snare hits. In come the big chords and the piano melody, all the electronics. There's not really much to say about the drums during the drop. It's just kind of, it's the same kick and snare pattern. The hi-hats come in here and they're a little bit different than the verse. Yeah, the drums weren't really the focal point here. I wanted to keep the drums the same and then just introduce some more melodic value with the chords and the melody. And at the end of one of these bars, yeah, you can see I've got this and I've cut it up and I've faded it a little bit on the ends, so it gives you like a dun 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 dun, just for a little bit of sparkle, you know, a bit of variation. It's not great always to have like bah. You want like a bam 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 da 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 da, bit of excitement, I guess, keeps it moving. Yeah, this is kind of what I mean here. At the end of this chord, I'll play you that. It flutters. I thought that kind of gave it a little bit more energy, and I've just done that with a tremolo modulation effect. I've loaded it up on the thing. I can do it here actually and show you what it's doing. So I've loaded this up and I've set the phase to 0 so that it's taking the volume of the whole track and it's going whoosh, 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 whoosh. And I can just set that to whatever speed I want. It's going to do it really fast. If I set it to 132, yeah, you can hear it's going like, it's a bit crazy. But that's what I've done there at the end of this chord. The end of the drop should be like a transition from high energy to low energy. And it's down to you whether you want that to be a smooth transition or just like a drop out. And for this, I kind of wanted like a halfway, you know, I wanted it to drop out and then reveal all that lovely piano texture underneath. But I wanted to do this in a way that made sense, you know, a way that was smooth as well. And so there's a few things going on here. I'm going to play it to you now. Yeah, so the drums continue for like a bar and then they drop out just to keep the energy going a little bit. You might notice that sound where it goes, and if you see a DJ in the club and he's got his finger on a knob and he's doing that and the track goes, basically what I've done here, I've got a high pass filter and I've automated it so that as it builds to the end of the drop, it lets all of those high frequencies through, but it cuts the low end. So it goes, takes away a lot of the low, mid and the bass from the mix. So it appears like it's losing energy, but at the same time, all of the sounds are like doing the same thing. It's still got lots of energy. It's like a paradox, you know? You can actually see, I think I've done that on the sidechain bus here. Oh Lord, what is going on here? See, this is why you don't leave a project for too long. Oh my God, what have I even done? I can't remember where anything is. So yeah, this is what I was explaining down here. You can actually see this goes up. If I open the EQ, yeah, you can actually see the high pass filter going up and cutting out all of this mid as it gets to the end of the drop. And then on that final snare hit, it all comes back and then goes into the nice mellow piano second verse, you know, but still keeps some of that energy. And it's crashed. Okay, so we're back. If that happens, literally just quit and start it again. And it should be all right for another hour or so, I want to say. When you've got a lot of stuff going on like here, I've got a lot of MIDI as well. It's not great for your computer. A little tip I would give you, if you are a producer, you want to like speed things up, you don't want your computer to keep crashing, bounce everything out, have it as an audio file. Don't use MIDI all the time. I've just got this here, all of this MIDI, because I'm just being lazy, you know. The best way to do this would be to bounce it out to an audio track and just mix it that way. But just for convenience, and because I've finished this project now, there's no point in doing that. Oh, I've got it as MIDI. So the second verse is actually slightly different. It's something I like to do in my tracks. I don't like to copy and paste. Hear a lot of music that's like, it's produced up until the first drop. Yeah, like the first is good, the build-up's great. Oh my God, this drop's amazing. And then you hear the second half of the track and it's exactly the same, you know? For me, I think my ears are always like wanting that little bit of extra, a little bit of variation. So I've done that straight away with this. So the piano is actually slightly different than before. I'll play you the first verse here so you can compare it. And the second verse, after the build-up, this is what it sounds like. So it's a little bit faster with a bit more energy, and I've got this very gentle snare, and the hi-hats continue as well, just to keep the energy going. And then it goes just straight back to the second verse. I've copy and pasted that. I've got the bass here, the same drums, but the piano still is slightly different there. So I'm going to play you the end of the second build-up because it doesn't really change much. All that stuff I said about copy and pasting, I've literally just copy and pasted this build-up. Yeah. But the drop is completely different, right? You can probably look at this and then see, ooh, first drop, second drop. You're probably thinking, what on earth is going on here? And you know, when I look at this, so am I. But I'll tell you what I've done here is I've actually taken the bits from the first drop, taken all the chords, I put them into a separate project actually, and I've like cut them up, chopped them up, arranged them in a different way. I've got some vocal chops under here which kind of act like a melody. Ooh, 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 ah, 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 ah. I'm never going to do that again. Yeah, all of these layers together just chopped up sound like this. It's a little bit rough, it's a little bit kind of sharp at places. I haven't done the best job mixing this, to be honest, but yeah, I had a bit of a tricky time with this second drop just because there was so much going on. I wanted to incorporate a lot of parts from the first drop, but then add a little bit more as well, and that's where it started getting messy with the mix. And that's something that I actually kind of fixed during the master. And if you want me to show you, I can go through how I mastered it and how to combat some of those issues. Because this mix overall, it wasn't the best. It was quite difficult to do, obviously, because there was so much going on. I didn't do the best job mixing it, but I mixed it okay. And during the master, I had a chance to like fix a lot of those issues. So I will go through that with you, and I'll explain how I've done that. But yeah, the second drop sounds very different. I mean, that's what I like though. I like the variation. The second drop is not the same as the first drop, but then during the second half, it goes back to those chords. Like I said, this isn't mixed amazingly, but it sounds much better in the master. And yeah, for the outro, back to the piano. And it just fades out eventually, just like that. So I hope you've enjoyed the breakdown of my new track. It will be available on SoundCloud. I'll be posting it as soon as I post this video. So if you liked it, go and check it out. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.